Now, over the years, a number of studies have revealed that people who exercise regularly are less likely to suffer a sudden heart attack or other life-threatening cardiac event. However, in recent times, it appears more elite athletes are being linked to various heart conditions. And just last year, Bronny, the son of prominent basketball player LeBron James, reportedly suffered a sudden cardiac arrest during basketball practice. Now, several other athletes, including Danish footballer Christien Erikson and Amazulu's George Maluleka, closer to home, have collapsed during games, clutching their chest in discomfort. And in the most recent incident happening this past weekend, AS Roma's Ndicka became the latest footballer to collapse on the pitch during a league game. This leading to the match eventually being abandoned. So can it still be said then that people who exercise regularly are safer from cardiovascular disease, or are there other factors to be considered? Well, we're going to unpack this chat now, and joining me to do that is SAFA Chief Medical Officer and author of the book Sports Medicine, My Love and Passion, Dr. Thulani Ngwenya. Dr. Ngwenya, thank you so much for your time and welcome to the AM Report.
Good morning, Andy, and good morning to all your viewers. Thank you for inviting me.
I think for a conversation of this nature, it's always very important to go back to basics and perhaps distinguish between the various cardiac issues that people can experience, some very sudden, others happening over a period of time progressively. Perhaps from your end, just to set the scene then in terms of the various events that could lead to one suffering from cardiac arrest.
Thank you very much, Andy. I think let me kickstart with actually distinguishing between heart attack and sudden cardiac arrest, because people use those two terms interchangeably, and they are not the same. So with heart attack, you can have it. Any person can actually have a heart attack, and it is not really common with sporting athletes. Because with heart attack, it is a vascular condition where your coronary artery disease becomes blocked. Coronary artery becomes blocked, and then that causes heart attack. And most of the time, it presents with excruciating pain. But with cardiac arrest, with a heart attack, it can cause cardiac arrest, but a cardiac arrest cannot cause heart attack. So that is the two. So when you've got a heart attack, it can eventually lead to a cardiac arrest. A cardiac arrest, as you would know, the heart is a muscle that is used to pump blood to the rest of the body. So when the heart is unable to pump the blood to the rest of the body, then unfortunately you suffer cardiac arrest. Most sporting athletes suffer cardiac arrest due to several conditions. It could be upper respiratory tract infection. We have seen during the times of COVID-19 being an upper respiratory tract infection causing a lot of heart of myocarditis leading to cardiac arrest. It could be hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, with most African countries having genetic predisposition with their hearts. They usually have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. That is the leading cause of cardiac arrest with African athletes. So I just wanted to start there and distinguish between the two.
Oh, brilliant. And you've mentioned something very important, which leads me to the next question, and that is the predisposition of African athletes. We're seeing this a lot more common in recent times where athletes are collapsing on the pitch. What would you attribute this to? Is it perhaps detection is getting better, or could it be what you've mentioned before, which is the likes of the COVID-19 vaccine, which would then present other issues and challenges?
I've heard and I've read a lot of reports saying COVID-19 vaccine could be the cause of this collapse that we are seeing now of late, and it is a myth. When it comes to science, you need to do research, and then you have to actually have evidence that shows that COVID vaccine is a cause. But having said that, with most African countries, we see the biggest cause is the predisposition of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And we have always said that most athletes must actually undergo pre-competition or pre-season medical screening, where the heart is actually screened, where we can actually do ECG, we do echocardiogram and cardiac MRI. And this is valid for only a year. After a year, then it's invalid. You have to do another one. So with most sporting athletes, because now when they are training or when they are exercising, the heart gets swollen. It hypertrophies. Just like a person that is doing bodybuilding, when they lift weight, they bulk up, just like the heart is also a muscle. It does the same. That is actually done to actually adapt to the physiological requirements that comes with exercise. So the more you train, the more you play, is the more your muscle swells up, is the more your heart muscle hypertrophies. So that is why it is important that each and every year you go through a medical screening. But that does not mean, however, that you will not suffer a cardiac arrest, but it would essentially mean that you would actually have less cases of cardiac arrest, because you are able to pick up that, hey, your heart now, the parameters are now on the red area. So we need to find a way around it. So I would actually advise that most athletes must undergo this pre-medical screening, which is a requirement.
Well, a lot of people at home might be watching and thinking, well, doctors tell us that we need to exercise to remain healthy, but we're now listening to a doctor saying our organs swell up when we do exercise. So what are some of the risk factors then, and who would be at higher risk of such diseases, and how does one avoid it if it is at all possible?
So I would always say that, yes, it is true that we always say people must go and exercise, but it is always advisable for you to go through medical screening. People don't go through medical screening, not only for exercising, but just to check your health status. It is important to go through medical screening each and every year so that you know how your heart is. So by knowing how your heart is, then we are able to deal with the challenges, and we are able to advise you in terms of how you need to exercise and how often and what exercises you need to actually do. But if you do not do that, then you are at risk. You don't just go and exercise for the sake of exercising. It must be planned. It must also be monitored by a person that is a professional and that is responsible for that particular exercise.
And just as we close off then, Doctor, how do we make sure that such incidents do not repeat themselves? We did see, the passing on of former Bidvest Wits player Fati Papi after ignoring instructions from doctors who said you were at risk. How does this message get across quicker and more seriously to athletes so that they do take the required action and we don't have athletes that pass on the field of play?
So I would make a call not only to athletes, but also to bosses that own teams and clubs, to say that, a lot of people would see medical screening as if it's an extra cost. But I usually say athletes are human beings before they are actual athletes. So it is important that you make sure that they undergo through screening. And we see cardiac arrest in most younger athletes. Imagine when you have a 16-year-old leaving your house and then coming back as a corpse. It is uncalled for. At this day and age, we shouldn't have people dying in a sporting field because of cardiac arrest, because we've got expertise, especially here in South Africa. We've got experts, we've got sports physicians. So it is important that everyone goes through the screening, and it must be compulsory. Don't go through to a doctor to just get a signature, just to make sure that you register your athletes. But make sure that the screening is done and it's done thoroughly.
Well, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us, and I certainly hope they'll heed the call there and see the seriousness of this issue.